Okay. 1 year after, we are here again with Elodie Harper, and I'm so pleased to meet her again. It's such an honor to be speaking with you, Elodie.
It's so nice to be here. Lovely to see you again, Chiara.
1 year after, we met for the House with the Golden Door, for the Italian publication of the book, of the second part of the Wolfden trilogy. And now we're here again for Il Tempio di Fortuna, for the Temple of Fortuna. So I have some questions for you.
Lovely, thank you.
Okay, thinking about the ending of Amara's journey feels so strange. In the Temple of Fortuna, more than in the other two books, we can see Amara through nature, a survivor, a woman able to fight and manipulate everyone in order to achieve her goals and preserve her freedom. What's in her, what's in Amara that makes you feel so proud of her?
I love Amara not because she's perfect. I mean, she's very flawed. There are lots of things not so likable about her. But I wanted to create a character who illustrated how anybody might try and make the best of a really terrible situation. So sometimes characters can be quite romanticized or sentimentalized. You know, make choices that aren't in their own interests, but look like the moral or the right thing to do. And with Amara, her priority is her freedom, which for her, she focuses a lot on the money, but it's also her family, because this is something that's been taken away from her. So although her goals seem to shift during the books, I think that's always at the heart of what she does. And over the course of the trilogy, so in the first book, she's really learning just to survive, just to try and get out of slavery. She has to abandon people along the way in order to do that. And she has to do things she doesn't particularly like or want to do in order to gain her freedom. But then, as she gets more power, she realizes that love is also something that she wants to prioritize, because, all of us need our relationships, our family. And in the House with the Golden Door, we see that. And then in the Temple of Fortuna, she kind of has to make this choice between what it is that she most wants in her life, because it's very rare that any of us have everything.
Nonetheless, she lives in a place where money is power.
Yes.
Okay.
Very much. And, Amara is quite obsessed with money, but this is taken partly from the writings about courtesans, Roman authors' writings about courtesans, so Ovid, or some of the plays like Terence or Plautus, which portray courtesans as being very obsessed with money, very greedy, but actually they had such a precarious life. I wanted to look at that aspect of the sort of stereotype of how women survive that way from a more sympathetic point of view. And for her, really, money is, she doesn't have family, she doesn't have status. All she has are her looks for a period of time. And so she has to create her own security out of that, which for her becomes representing money. I think Amara, by book 3, money has come to represent something more than just gold. It's about her security in the world, I think. I know some people are quite negative about Amara's obsession with money, but for me, that's why she is so obsessed with money. It's not because she's so greedy. It's because this feels like safety to her. This is how she will not ever have to go back somewhere like the Wolf Den.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you. And that's why probably I enjoy so much the Wolf Den trilogy. And I think that a lot of young women like me, like entrepreneur, so keen to empathize with Amara, because we live in a world where now women can study and make their own life in this world. Amara is a true modern heroine, and like that kind of heroine with we can empathize. Okay, so that's one of the motive why we love that so much. So just also looking at the cover, there is something we've been waiting for since the first book, and we definitely saw it coming. The Vesuvius finally explodes in all its power, and blows away the city of Pompeii, and not just Pompeii, but on top of everything, differences among classes. Here, as you already did in your previous novels, is where a moment of violence and chaos turns itself in a chance for your character to reinvent themselves and imagine a new stories for them. I'm thinking especially about Britannia. And yeah, that's one of my favorite things in the Temple of Fortuna. Are they become different characters from the ones you have imagined before?
Yes, I think all the characters over the course of the book were not quite how I imagined it would go at the beginning. So with Amara, the change happened between book 1 and 2 in terms of what I imagined happening to her character, because initially I imagined her becoming, ever more like Felix, powerful, pursuing power, pursuing power over other people. Whereas actually, when I thought about it, I think trauma doesn't tend to affect people like that outside of novels. It makes your vulnerabilities also come to the surface. And so for Amara in book 2, she's very preoccupied with relationships, with love, with wanting to build something else in her life. So that took the character in a slightly different way from how I originally intended. And with Britannica as well, originally that character in book 1, she was very much about thinking about what would happen if a woman in the wolf den simply refused to cooperate on any level. She's quite a tragic character in that book. But as time went on, her sort of utter resistance became something that I found really fascinating to think about. I think with the volcano as well, it's been covered a lot in fiction, obviously. And in looking at that event, I wanted to stick very closely to the ancient sources for what it was like, and to not actually take an expert's view of it, because it's from the point of view of Amara that we see it, who would not have been an expert, who would not have understood what was going on. So I wanted to really focus on the chaos and the confusion, and also on an aspect of it that isn't covered as often, which is the recovery and the refugees afterwards, because many people survived Vesuvius and they created new lives for themselves, particularly in Naples. So I wanted to really explore that aspect of what a sort of horrific tragedy and a massive event like that, how that would change people's lives, obviously in a negative way, but also as a means, as you say, social class sort of shifting around. We know that a lot of freed people were able to move up somewhat the social ladder after Vesuvius, because they didn't have the same history of being in the town where everyone had known them, all their history. They could kind of leave their past behind to a degree. So I found that really interesting.
That's a very fascinating aspect, as I said, because there's a chance, an occasion of violence turns in a chance to change everything, okay, to a fresh start. I really loved it. I really enjoyed it. In the same time, we, of course, in Italy, especially in classic high school, we study a lot from the Latin sources. But reading from Hamara's point of view, from the refugees, it looks like everything's so familiar and new in the same way, in the same level. So that's very fascinating. So my last questions, your special signature in this trilogy for me will be forever and ever how you've been able to tell a story about a simple person instead of the epic story of a goddess. You gave to all the outsiders a clear personal voice, but also, how can I say, the dignity of passion and love, to be passionate about something, to feel love for someone. What did push you to focus on the stories of people that in a way are being muted by history?
Thank you so much for your words, Chiara. That means a lot. Thank you. I very much wanted to focus on ordinary women because I don't think anybody actually is ordinary. I think my work as a journalist has given me just immense respect for I mean, I'm an ordinary person, you're an ordinary person, you know, most of us are ordinary. But I think working as a journalist, I just feel immense respect for people when they are faced with extraordinary events. People can be incredible and we never hear their stories, even today. You know, your neighbor might be an incredible person, but in the ancient world, it's particularly severe the way that people have been forgotten. Firstly, because the elite of that time, who are responsible for most of the recorded information, didn't consider people important at the time. And secondly, because of the passage of time, so little survives. And that's why I chose to write about Pompeii. It wasn't actually the eruption at all. And for the first book in particular, I often kind of almost forgot completely about Vesuvius. That wasn't what really attracted me to write about Pompeii. It was the fact that in the site of Pompeii, we have this unique example of artifacts from the lives of ordinary people, the graffiti, the paintings, the taverns where they drank. It's a picture of life that is so unusual to see. And I think, you know, increasingly the archaeological work going on there does focus on the lives of ordinary people. So really this felt like a gift to me, you know, as a topic to write about. You know, the lives of ordinary Roman people from that ancient time are fascinating, and they haven't been covered, and they are just as important as the lives of everybody else, and, you know, women in particular.
Thank you, Elodie. I think that the Temple of Fortuna is such a fitting conclusion for the trilogy. And maybe we are a bit orphans now because we've been together with Amara for a lot of time. And I had literally a queue outside the bookstore and the publications
day. Thank you so much for telling me this. I'm very, very, very touched by that. I felt sad to say goodbye to Amara too. She feels like a character it's quite hard for me to leave behind as a writer as well. But I also feel like at the end of the book, I left her exactly where I wanted to leave her.
Yeah, very well then. Thank you, Elodie. Thank you. And welcome back to Italy anytime.
Oh, thank you, Chiara. Thank you so much.